Hey guys, Sean from Bantam Overland. In today's video, we'll be going over Quart's Stage 6 audio upgrade for the 2018.5 to 2023 Jeep JL. We'll also be going through the disassembly of the Jeep, as well as the installation and the reassembly. So stick with us as I give you a close-up of everything that's included in the Quart Stage 6 system. So Quart has included everything necessary to complete your install, and it's fully plug and play. So let's go over what's included in the Stage 6 system. First, we have our amplifiers. So you'll get the amplifier rack that goes underneath the passenger seat, two 2-channel amplifiers, all the necessary power and ground hardware, and you'll notice that it actually comes with 3 pre-terminated plugs. You'll get all of your necessary wiring to run your new Quart system. You have your rear speaker wire and your front speaker wire. So you have your front dash speakers, so you'll go from a twiddler to an actual coaxial type speaker. We have our front speaker pods. Now, in the Jeeps, you have a 4-inch speaker. You'll go to a 6.5-inch speaker on both sides. Included in the kit is new 6x9s with new grills for the rear soundbar. Now, as an option, you can opt for the new soundbar with the 4 8-inch horn speakers or coaxial speakers. Now, horn speakers are usually a little louder than a coaxial type, where a coaxial is more musical. And you can also choose this with RGB, as you see here, or no RGB. The only other option you would need is you would need to purchase an RGB controller if you want to have the ability to change colors on the fly, or you can just power them and get yourself one color. So now we go to the head unit side of the kit. So if you have a stock head unit, and it doesn't matter if you have premium audio or bass audio, it's going to include the PAC CH41 V2 controller. Now what that'll do for you is give you all of your RCA outputs to control the system, as well as a sub-level controller. Now again, Quart has thought of everything ahead of time for you and give you all of your necessary wiring harnesses, absolutely everything to complete this installation. So the 6x9s in the Stage 6 kit do require you to cut your factory soundbar. I'm going to show you how to do that, as well as I'm going to show you how to install the optional new soundbar. So stick with us through the rest of this video. We're going to go through the sub options that you have for the Jeep JL. We're going to do disassembly. We're going to go ahead and install all of this, and then we're going to go ahead and do reassembly. So now that we've gone over the Quart Stage 6 audio bundle, let's go ahead and go over some of the sub solutions that are available for the Jeep JL, and we're going to do that now. So we've gone over our options for the Quart Stage 6 speaker kit. Now we have 2 options for a subwoofer. So if you notice, we're missing a little something on the amplifier rack. That's because you need a subwoofer. Both subwoofer options come ready to go, fully plug and play. The Tailgate subwoofer, which is a 12-inch sub, and this enclosure is ported. And then you have the premium audio factory subwoofer upgrade. Again, also comes with everything necessary to make it plug and play. So you'll have your monoblock amplifier for both of those. You have your speaker wire, and then on this one, you have your amplifier, your enclosure, and all of your speaker wire. So now we already have our Stage 6 installed. We have our 2 amplifiers. Now we pick which one we want. Again, premium audio means you have the factory sub on the passenger side of the vehicle. So if you have bass audio, you're going to go with the 302. If you have the premium audio setup in your Jeep, you can either do, again, the OEM upgrade, or you can go ahead and do the tailgate sub. Either or, doesn't really matter. So as far as the amplifier, this will sit neatly right next to the other two on the amp rack. Again, the power wire kit that is included with the Stage 6 bundle is already pre-wired for 3 amplifiers, so you don't have to worry about whether you do it now or you want to go ahead and upgrade your Jeep at a later time. Everything's there, ready for you when you're ready to make that decision. So now that we've gone over both of MB Quart's sub solution for the JL, we can go ahead. I'm going to get out some tools, show you what you're going to need to do the disassembly, the installation, and the reassembly, and then we can begin disassembling our Jeep. So let's go over some of the tools necessary to complete our installation. First, we have some impact drivers. We have a cutting tool. You can use air saw, jigsaw, anything that's not going to mar that overhead console. We have a screw gun with a Phillips tip. We have a 7mm socket, T25 Torx for our screw gun, a pair of side cutters for the wire ties. We also have a T25 handled Torx driver, a T50 to remove the seat bolts, a T40 to remove other bolts in the back. We have a 13mm socket, a 10mm socket, a variety of panel popper tools, some wire ties, and a light. Now, your Jeep may have some different accessories or some different hardware that you need to remove in order to get at what we need to get at. Just make sure you know what you need before you begin the installation. So with that being said, let's not waste any more time and let's get into the disassembly of the Jeep. So before we begin with our disassembly, just want to make sure you take out anything that is not necessary or may hamper the disassembly, installation, or reassembly in your Jeeps. So floor mats, clothing, tool bags, anything like that, get them out just so you have a clean, free area to work in. So now that that's out of the way, let's begin with disassembling the front dash. Then we'll go ahead and remove the seats. Now I'm removing the seats mainly for the video purposes. You don't need to remove the seats, but it does make it a little bit easier. Next, we'll move to removing the rear soundbar. And then finally, we'll remove some of the pieces in the back for the subwoofer. So before we begin disassembly of our Jeep, there's one thing we always want to do, and that is disconnect power and ground from both batteries. So the start-stop battery as well as the main battery. So again, open up your hood, gain access to your batteries. And we're going to go ahead and remove the 2 10 mils, one here, one over here, and we're just going to get those off. Slide it off, set it to the side. Same thing with the positive side. So loosen it up, slide it off, set it towards the back, just making sure that they don't touch. Once you've got your battery undone and out of the way, we can go ahead and start with the dash disassembly. So let's begin the disassembly. I'm going to start with the center part of the dash, the radio, your start-stop button, your climate controls. Let's get those all out of the way. So first thing we're going to need is a panel popper. We're going to go ahead and remove the climate control and the start-stop button. So just gently put it behind, pull towards you to release the clips, and keep continuing to pull forward until it releases. Now here you'll have 2 connectors that we're going to want to unplug, the start-stop connector as well as the climate control connector. So this we'll put in a safe spot for now. So next we're going to go ahead and grab our screw gun or our Phillips head screwdriver. start removing some screws. There are 2 at the radio, and then 1 at your window control and power lighter. So let's go ahead and get those out. So we've got those 3 out. So that will allow you to release the trim bezel around the radio. So go ahead and just pull that towards you. And that will release that. Again, keep in the safe spot. Now, if you have an aftermarket head unit, that's kind of where the disassembly will change. Ours will be mainly focused on the factory head unit. That in, so let's remove those. So now those 4 are out. So one thing you kind of want to remember is when you're sliding this radio out, you may want to take a picture of it just so you know where all of the different plugs and connectors go. So we'll go ahead and just snap a quick picture of that, just so we have it. There we go. So now we can unplug everything. Unplug the USB, and then finally we have our main harness. We're just going to push down and slide back, and it will come out. And again, there's all the connectors for your factory radio. Put it in a safe spot, make sure it doesn't get damaged. So now our factory radio is out. We can just kind of stick those wires back in there. We have 1 screw right here to remove. That will actually remove this entire trim piece. So go ahead and pull that. And then just gently pull towards you. And you'll hear it release. So it's released. Now, sometimes this will happen. You'll take notice it left a couple of the attaching clips in the bezel. You're going to want to make sure you remove those and get those reattached. I'll show you when we go for reassembly exactly how to do that. So now we just have our window switch and power outlet area to remove. So we've already removed the 1 screw. You can go ahead and just gently pull towards you. It will release. And then you can kind of lift it up and towards you. Now again, this has a whole bunch of plugs in it. It may be a good idea to go ahead and take a picture of that. Make sure we plug in everything again. So we'll go to our pictures. Cool. Snap a picture of that. So we can go ahead and start unplugging everything out of that. So this red clip here, easiest thing, slide it out, and then you'll go ahead and unplug your window switch. Then go ahead and pull out the rest of the plugs, your 2 USBs, and your power plug. Now we have everything unplugged. Go ahead and set that in a safe spot. So now that's our center part of the dash disassembled. Now we can go ahead and move over to the driver's side, get all of this off, get our driver's front speaker out, And let's go ahead and do that next. All right, so let's begin disassembling the driver's side of the Jeep. Now I've already removed the T40 holding the doorstop on, so that gives me a little more room to get at where I need to be. So I'm going to be removing this panel here, exposing some screws, removing this panel, a couple more screws, and then we'll have to take off some others around, as well as we'll actually disconnect the door harness. Now this doesn't have to be done, it just makes things a little easier. So let's go ahead, get this panel off, get this panel off, show you those screws. So as far as underneath the steering wheel, you will just pull straight towards you, releasing the clip. So that will release that. As far as this, we're going to need our panel removal tool again, and we'll just kind of gently get it behind, pop those clips. Just be gentle, don't mar your dash. And then we'll be able to remove that. So from there, it'll show us a bunch of screws that we're going to be removing. Now the one right down here in the corner is hard to get at. You may need to get yourself a 7mm open-ended wrench to kind of get that, as well as it may be helpful for when we remove the other 7mm that's down here. So let's go ahead, start getting some of these off. So there is one more screw we need to talk about, and that is this screw that sits right down here. So that is what actually attaches one of the screw points to the factory speaker pod, as well as it will attach to any aftermarket pod. So let's go ahead, grab our open-ended wrench, get this 7mm out here. So there's that screw. So now we have a couple of screws along the dash that we need to remove. So they're on the inside. We don't really need to remove a whole lot past there. So let's go ahead and get these out. So once those are out, we can gently pull on the shroud and pull that up. So that will reveal one more screw here, and then one screw directly underneath the tachometer, and one screw under the speedometer. So let's go ahead and remove these two first. All right, so now we have the 4 on top of the speedometer and tachometer trim to remove. So let's go ahead and remove those. So now all 4 of those are removed. You can go ahead and pop this out. And set this somewhere safe. So now we have 2 more screws, one here, one up here that we need to remove our headlight switch and gain access to where our bottom speaker is. So there's 1, there's 2, and then this will kind of be loose. So we have one more 7mm screw that's down here. We'll go ahead and release that, and then this whole piece will be able to come off and we'll be able to unplug our headlight switch. So now let's go ahead and get this last screw. It is easier to remove the door plug. So for that, slide that red pin back and then just gently pop up on the handle all the way and then remove. So now we have the 7mm that sits right here. Again, it's probably easiest with a small 7mm open-ended wrench. So go ahead and get that loosened up. So you just want to be careful that you don't drop it behind any of the plastic. But I got it out. So now we can actually remove this whole thing. So here we have another locking tab. Slide that red back and then press in to release. Make sure we set this in a safe place. So now we can see where our factory speaker pod is. Now again, there's a couple of more steps we need to take. So a base model will not have the antenna that is here. A Rubicon or anything with GPS will have this here. There's one screw holding it in. Then we can pull this out and unplug. Set that in a safe place. Now with that out, we can see our screw holding in, as well as our screw holding in our factory enclosure. So from there, you can go ahead and take that one out, and this one out. Now here's where it helps to have the door all the way open. Again, you can get it without having the door all the way open, but it just makes it just a little bit easier. So let's go ahead and get these out. So now that our speaker pod is loose, we can go ahead and move up to our top dash speaker. Pretty simple. We're just going to pop off the cover. That'll reveal two 7mm screws holding in the speaker, and then we just need to disconnect it. So let's go ahead and do that. So as far as the dash speaker, take your panel popper, stick it underneath, and just gently pry up. And then we can pop it up. Getting all four clips off. Now again, there's two 7mm, one here, one back here. We're just gonna go ahead, use our socket wrench, get those removed. and screw number 2. So now from there, just need to grab the speaker, and there'll be a small plug. So just press in on the white tab and pull the plug off and set aside. Now to complete the disassembly of the driver's speaker pod, we're gonna have to remove some bolts to the substructure. Now this one is a 21, so it'll have a mixture of 8mm and 10mm. Some of the older ones had just 10mm, so just be aware of that. So we have one here, one up here, and then we have a 10mm here and a 10mm up here. That will actually take out that whole piece there and help us slide that speaker pod out. So let's go ahead, remove this 8mm first here. Then we'll go ahead and slide up high, remove that one. So there's that. Switch over to the 10mm, remove that one. And then up underneath, directly below here, but behind the brace, we'll remove that. That will have that brace come out. So now we have access to the back of it. You'll see the speaker wire that comes in. Just go ahead, reach in. The push pin for the release is towards the firewall. So we can remove that there. And then we can take our speaker and slide it out. So once we have it slid out, you'll notice that there is a module on the back of that. That is your TPMS module. You're going to want to make sure you unplug that. So there. Go here. That's your module. If you forget to plug this back in, your vehicle will not start. So just be very aware that whatever you're doing, make sure that this is plugged back in. So now that the driver's side is done, we can go ahead, move to the passenger side, start getting that disassembled to remove our speaker pod and our dash speaker. So now we're on the passenger side, very similar to the driver's side as far as what we kind of need to remove on the sides. Now it's just a glove box. We'll have to remove the grab handle as well as the airbag area. So let's go ahead, start first by removing the glove box. So pretty easy, drop it down. There's a handle here that you want to lift up and pull out. You need to be very careful with that, because if you break it, your glove box won't lower automatically. So then pushing up on the catch and then just pulling the glove box out. Pretty simple there. So from there, we're going to go ahead, remove our side panel, and then remove our door wire harness. So we're going to grab our panel popper, again, just like the other side, just gently pop everything out. Get that top one. Go ahead and set that somewhere safe. And then as far as the door harness, again, just push up on the red tab and then just kind of release the handle, pulling it out, and setting it gently. So now we have most of the components. Next, we're going to remove this 10mm, remove this cover, and then remove that 10mm. That will pull off our grab handle. Grab it from the front part because there are hinges on the back. So just kind of gently pry and then pull away. So now we'll remove the two 10mm bolts holding that. So 1 and 2. So now you'll notice that there is a airbag cover here. So we need to gently get under that and put that out. So we'll remove that. So we had 1 stay in. We'll get that out once we remove all the bolts. So now we need to start removing some screws, just like the driver's side. We have 3 screws at the bottom. We have a total of 7 screws holding the airbag in, and then we have our screws on the side. So let's go ahead, start removing these screws. Now we have our 1 at the bottom that we'll grab with our little 7mm wrench. Okay, now all those are out. So that is a little bit free. So now we need to remove 2 13mm bolts from up under the glove box, as well as unplug the airbag, because we'll actually be removing this entire thing, and the airbag is attached to this. Again, not that big of a deal. We've already disconnected the power and the ground from the battery. Should have no problems disconnecting it. So let's go ahead and grab those 2 13mm out and unplug that airbag. So now let's get this passenger side airbag unplugged and unbolted. So airbag is right here. All you're gonna do, push down on the tab, slide it out. Again, I'll go ahead and plug it in again for you. So push in, slide it out. Now there are 2 13mm bolts that are pretty well hidden. They're on the back side of the first brace, but before the black wrapped harness right here. I'll show you a picture of those. Unfortunately, we're not really going to be able to get video of it because it's pretty hard to see. So those are the 2 13mm bolts that we'll be removing next. So let's go ahead and get those removed. So go ahead, get our impact gun. So there's our first 13mm bolt. The other one is just beside it. So there's our other 13mm bolt. So now that those 2 are unplugged, we can go ahead and remove the 6 screws from the actual airbag. So once those screws are removed, there are a couple pop clips, and the entire thing will remove from the dash. So you want to set this in a very safe location. So now we have just a couple more screws that we need to remove to gain access to our passenger side speaker pod. So we have a couple of screws here here as well as here, and that will give us the ability to get the dash out of the way to remove our speaker pod. So let's go ahead and get those out. So now that those three are removed, we should be able to gently pull out on our dash. So we have a little bit of movement here. So holding the pod into the dash, there is one just inside the glove box, and then one lower down here. And then we have the same one on the side that is holding the pod in from there. So before we remove the bolts and remove the pod, we want to reach in, go ahead and unplug the speaker plug from the pod itself. Again, the push pin is towards the firewall, so just push in and slide it out. So from there, now we can go ahead and remove those remaining 3 bolts, and then we can remove that speaker pod. So we'll go ahead and grab this first one on the side. And then we can pull the dash away slightly. Okay. So go ahead and remove the bottom screw. And then go ahead and remove the 3rd screw. Now we can just go ahead and remove our speaker pod through the glove box hole or out the side, either way. So now getting that out of the way, we can go ahead and move up to our dash speaker, exactly the same as the driver's side. We're just gonna pop it up, 2 7mm, unplug it, take it out. All right, let's go ahead and remove this passenger dash speaker. Again, just putting our pry tool underneath, gently lifting up, releasing all the clips, and we have 2 7mm screws holding it down. Go ahead and get those out. Remove the second one. All right, we got our second one. So now all we have to do, lift up on the speaker, push in that little tab, and remove. So now we have our entire front dash, radio, as well as heater controls all completely disassembled. So next we're going to move to removing both driver and passenger seats. I'm going to show you how to do that next. So now continuing on with the disassembly of our Jeep JL, we're going to go ahead and remove the front driver and passenger seats. So to do that, in this case, it is a T50 Torx. Some Jeeps have a 10mm bolt holding the seat in. Just double check yours before you go ahead and start removing it. So let's go ahead and begin to remove the front driver's seat. I'm going to start in the rear, removing 2 bolts. So now I'm on the passenger side. Let's go ahead and remove the 2 bolts from the passenger seat, exactly the same as the driver. So now both the rear bolts on the passenger seat are removed. So now I have 2 more bolts to remove on the front of the driver's seat. So let's get those removed. Then we can actually lift the seat up, unplug the connectors that are connected to the bottom of the seat, and I'll show you how to do that now. So now that I've removed the 2 front bolts, you can go ahead and lift the seat up. Now there's a couple of things we need to remove. So there's a Christmas tree holding the wiring in here, just grab your panel popper, pop that off of the seat. There's another one up here. Get your panel tool underneath and pop out. So once we've removed these two Christmas trees, we have two plugs that we need to remove. One is the seat airbag. The other is the rest of the controls for the seat sensor. So we'll just slide the red locking pin back and disconnect the harness. Next is the airbag. Same thing. We'll slide the red pin back and unplug. Once you unravel it out of the seat, you can go ahead and lift and remove your seat. Now you do want to be careful with any of the trim inside, and I suggest you always take off the headrest. Just pick it up, turn slightly, and remove. So now we're over on the passenger side. We need to remove the two bolts in the front. So let's go ahead, get those removed. So now I've got both bolts out, same as the driver's side. Gonna flip the seat back, check and see where any of the Christmas trees are. So here's the first one. So release the first one. Looks like that's all. So we want to make sure that is pushed all the way back and then push in on the tab to release. And as far as the airbag, same. It's got a little red locking tab. Push back on that and then push in to remove. Then go ahead and untangle out of the seat, and then we'll remove it. Again, I find it easier to remove the seat with the headrest already off. So I already have that off. Just pick it up, turn, and take it out. So now we have both seats out. We can go ahead and turn our attention to the soundbar. So this has a lot of T25 screws. We need to remove some of the overhead panels, front and rear. This can be hard on the one-touch Skytop, so be careful. If you have a soft top or have the ability to remove your hard top, this makes it easier, but it is not necessary. So let's go ahead, start taking off all of our trim panels to gain access to our rear soundbar. So now it's time to remove the rear soundbar out of our Jeep JL. So we have 11 total T25 Torx along the side and the top. We have 3 T25 Torx in the top part of the plastics, and then another 11 total on the passenger side. So let's go ahead, start removing all of these, and then we'll go ahead and remove those, and then we'll jump over to the passenger side to remove those 11. So we got all the bottom ones. Let's go ahead and get the top backside removed. So now let's get the top ones removed. So now we're going to remove the 3 T25 on the top of the plastic trim panel. So let's get those done. Now those 3 are out, we can move over to the passenger side and remove those 11. So now we're on the passenger side. We're going to go ahead and remove the 11 T25s from this side. I'm going to start on the bottom, then work my way to the top. So we have the bottom out, now we can go ahead, get the 4 up top. So now we have all the top ones out. I'm going to show you how to remove the plastic pieces. So now all of your T25 screws are out. We need to take off all this plastic trim from both sides, drivers, passengers, front and rear, as well as the center piece here. So first with this side, just grab and kind of pull gently and then slide back, and you can actually leave it just hang there. From here, just take a little panel popper. There's a little pin that holds this into place. Once you release it, it'll drop down. Then you can start pulling the rest of it down. This side will actually physically come all the way out. And this side you will take one and just kind of gently push. Now, some of the JLs will have a microphone in here. You'll just have to unplug that and set it to the side. And I'll show you a close-up here where the 10 millimeters that actually hold the soundbar to the Jeep are. But let's go to the other side, get that all popped off, and I can show you that. Exact same process on the driver's side as the passenger side. Just kind of peel this off. Now again, here is where that pin is located, right here. We're going to grab our panel popper and pop that out. So once this pin is out, just like on the passenger side, continue on, removing the rear one. And popping the panels out. So now we're going in the middle. We need to pop out the center light here. We need to release that, and then this piece will come off, and then that'll expose the entire soundbar. So now we have one more piece we need to remove before we can gain full access to our soundbar. So that is this piece. We've already removed the 3 T25, holding it into place. What we need to do is now remove the light. So that is just gently getting a pry tool up underneath. So gently pull. It'll probably fall down. Want to just disconnect the plug. Set that somewhere safe. So now once that comes down, just gently pull on the actual piece to make it come down. Now we have full access to all of our bolts holding in our soundbar, as well as our soundbar speaker plug and our light harness. So we're gonna go ahead and just pop that off of there now. So that's popped off. And then our speaker plug is here. I'll show you how to unplug that once we start taking out the 10 millimeter bolts. So now it's time to remove the 6 total 10 millimeter bolts holding in our soundbar. And then we also need to unplug the speaker connection. So let's go ahead and start taking out those bolts. So there's the 3 bolts on the driver's side. We'll move over to the passenger side. Now this is where it helps sometimes to have a second pair of hands to get the soundbar down and out. It's not heavy, it's just awkward. So let's go ahead, get our speaker harness unplugged by just pressing in and pulling backwards. Now, if the soundbar hasn't been removed before, it's got some of the Christmas trees to kind of hold it in. So you just need to kind of give it a little tug and a little tug. And now you can actually physically remove the entire soundbar. So we're almost at the finish line. Last thing I really want to show you is how to remove the OEM premium audio subwoofer from the passenger rear side panel. It's pretty easy, but it takes a little bit of work to do. So first of all, we're going to want to remove our slide out. Then we're going to remove the 3 T40s from the tie downs. We have a T25 that is behind the rear seat in the corner. And then finally, we have to just pop some of the little trim panels off. So let's go ahead, start removing all that stuff, and I'll show you how to do it. So first thing I want to do is I want to remove the cover panel. So with that, you'll just slide it back, and then you can remove it. Next thing I want to do is I want to grab my panel popper, and I need to flip these here and just pop the top, revealing the T40 on each one of these. And then this last one is actually backwards. So that reveals each of those. So with my T40, go ahead and remove each one of those. So now I've got all 3 of those out. So then that will allow me just to pick this side piece up and move it, which is giving us access to some of the bottom of the sub enclosure. So now I'm going to remove the T25 from right in this little cubby right behind the rear seat. So there's the T25 out. Now that we have that T25 out there, we can go ahead and take out our holder here. Just remove that, set that to the side. If you have your roof bolts in there, just be careful. So now we're all free. We have one more thing here. This is the seatbelt cover. Just gently place your panel tool in there and pop that up. So from there, we're going to pull off the gasket, and then we'll take our panel tool and just get in behind there and just slowly start popping it out. Eventually it will release. It's all on pop clips, so don't really need to be too concerned about it. And then we have one plug on this side. So this is the premium audio subwoofer plug. So just go ahead and unplug that. Once you get the factory sub unplugged, you can go ahead, just grab the whole unit and remove it from the vehicle. Now that our Jeep is finally completely disassembled, we can begin our installation of our Stage 6 MB Quart speaker bundle. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take our soundbar to the table. I'm going to show you how to cut it and install those new 6x9s in your soundbar. So now it's time to cut in our 6x9s into our factory soundbar. So inside the kit, MB Quart provides you with everything necessary to install them. They give you 8 screws and 4 mounting screws for the 6x9s, new grills, obviously the speakers. So from there, there's a couple tools we're gonna need. We're gonna need our 3/16 Allen. We're gonna need a Sharpie of some sort. So we're gonna need our screw gun with a Phillips head and a T20, as well as a T35 Torx. Something to cut our plastic out with, whether that's a rotary tool, an air saw, whatever you have that you feel comfortable with. So from there, we're gonna grab our 3/16 Allen, go ahead and remove the 4 bolts holding the factory grill into place. And we're gonna go ahead and do that on both sides. So save those bolts. We're gonna use those when we put our new MB Quart grills back on. So now we have both grills popped off. We have our 4-inch and our tweeter, as well as we have our port. So from there, we need to remove our factory speakers. So we grab our screw gun and our T20 Torx and go ahead and start removing all of those. And on to the other side. So now we have all of our screws out. We can just simply remove and unplug our speakers. Four-inch speaker. And our other tweeter. So from there, we're going to go ahead and remove the foam blocks, get rid of those. And we're also going to pull out the 2 ports, which are T35s. So let's grab our T35. So we have those out, and then this will pull out and then slide out. Same on the other side. Pull that port out. Remove the gaskets. So from here, we'll go ahead and pull the tweeter side of the speaker wire through by pushing on it and just sliding it back through the hole. So now we have both on one side instead of one on one, one on the other. So put those back down. We'll do this one. Just needs a little bit of finesse, but it'll come right out. So now we have everything taken apart out of our factory soundbar. So we're going to grab our template. This is provided, so make sure we put it and make sure we have the right side for each one. It'll match up perfectly. Go ahead and grab our other side. Set that in. From here, we're going to grab our Sharpie and just make some lines of where we're going to cut. Then we can go ahead and remove that. So you can see that there's a nice line, and we'll go out and around and cut. You don't have to be perfect. The mounting plate for the 6x9 covers up most of the area, so you don't have to be super accurate. Go ahead and do it to the other one. And then remove that. So from here, you can go ahead and use whatever type of cutting tool you're comfortable with, whether it's a jigsaw, an air saw. If you're using a jigsaw and going to be running it over, just be extremely careful with where you're running it. I like to use either a roto tool or one of these, that oscillating tool, and goes by. So we'll do that, is what I will be using. So I'm going to go ahead, get these both cut out, and then I'm going to show you how to mount the mounting plate and then get the 6x9s plugged in and installed into the soundbar. All right, so let's go ahead, get these cut. So I got it cut. So we always want to check and make sure. We're going to want to deburr anything that we have on here, but let's just go ahead and check with our plate. Make sure everything's out of the way. Drop our speaker in. Speaker fits perfectly. That's great. So now we can move on to the other side and go ahead and cut that one. So we've got both sides cut. Let's confirm fitment. So drop it in there. Fits good. So now from there, again, if you want to run a razor blade around this, get rid of any of the extra little melted bits, depending on how you cut your soundbar. That's completely up to you. So I'm just going to knock off some of them for the install. So now we have 2 sets of speaker wires. Quart has provided the plugs for the new 6x9s, so they will plug into the smaller plug. Just make sure they click. Same thing on the other side. Plug it in, make sure they click. So now we're going to go ahead, drop our mounting plates in. And here is where we're going to be using our 16 total Phillips head screws with a Phillips head bit. So we're going to go around the outside, leaving the 4 on the inside for the machine screws to mount the Quart 6x9 in. So go ahead and just screw these all in. So all 8 screws are in. We can grab our speaker wire adapter, grab our 6x9, go ahead and plug in. The smaller is the negative of the speaker, the larger is the positive. So get those plugged in. Then you can go ahead and set your 6x9 in. Oh, gotta make sure those speaker wires are out of the way. So there we go. Set our speaker wires in. Now grab our 4 machine screws, drop them in to each hole. Give them maybe a half a turn or a turn just to make sure they're in, so we're not stripping them out. And then go ahead and tighten those up. So now we've gotten that all tightened up. We have our new MB Quart grill. You can drop that right back on. And we're going to go ahead and use our factory hardware. Get that started by hand. And then since we're already doing it, let's go ahead and just tighten this one up. So again, with your 3/16 Allen, go ahead and tighten it down. Don't need to tighten it down too tight. Snug is good. So now this side is 100% done. We can go ahead, get this side all screwed in. So we're going to grab our 8 Phillips head screws, go ahead and get those in. Grab our speaker wire, grab our speaker, small to the small, which is negative. The larger one is positive. Get that plugged in. Make sure we get our speaker out of the way. There we go. Drop each one of the machine screws in. Try to get it started if possible. Then we'll go ahead and screw those down. Now it's screwed down. Grab our new MB Quart grill. Put it right on top and grab our factory hardware. Then our 3/16 Allen, and then go ahead and tighten those down. And the last one. And now you've installed the 6x9s into your factory soundbar, and you're ready to put it back up in the Jeep. So now we're ready to begin installing our MB Quart Stage 6 system into our Jeep JL. First, I want to kind of show you the MB Quart speaker pod versus your factory speaker pod. So the MB Quart Stage 6 kit comes with a 6.5 preloaded into a factory style enclosure, while your factory speaker is a 4-inch. Now you'll notice the sizable difference in speaker, as well as you'll notice a increased output in both audio and clarity. So the first thing we're going to want to do before we install the new MB Quart Stage 6 system is we need to remove the module on the back of the factory pod. Now this is for your TPMS sensors and a couple of other integral parts of your Jeep. So if you don't install this, your Jeep will not start. So it's 3 7mm screws to take out, and it has a place to go onto the MB Quart. So let's go ahead, remove these 3 7mm. So that just pulls right off. Go ahead, set our factory enclosure down. Grab our new enclosure. So you notice our MB Quart enclosure has the 3 mounting locations. Just pop it on there. Go ahead and get your screws started. And then from there, you can go ahead and tighten them down. So now we have our module back on our MB Quart enclosure. So we can begin the installation. We'll be plugging our module in first, and then we will run our wire up to our dash 3.5. So again, first step, we want to make sure we plug our module in. Now we got that plugged in. Go ahead and fit our new speaker enclosure in, just getting it past any of the plastic. Now one thing you want to make sure is that we have both of these plugs out. This speaker wire will go up to the dash speaker. We'll get that run up that way. And then this plug will actually get run with the included wire to the amplifier. So we just want to make sure we have access to that. So there we go, I have it on that side. So now we can go ahead, line our new speaker up. It should line up with all of the factory holes. We can go ahead and grab 2 of our screws. Just kind of get that one started there and screwed in. Then we can go ahead and get the one on top screwed in. So leave both of those just a hair loose, because we're going to go ahead and we're going to need to find our speaker hole in here. Now it's going to be a little bit difficult to get it on video, but you'll be able to look in and see a small starter hole on the actual enclosure, and then you can go ahead and get that screwed in and then tighten up both of those screws. So once you get the screw in here into the enclosure, you can go ahead and tighten up the other 2 screws. So now that enclosure is mounted and solid. Next thing we need to do is run our wire up and get it to the top dash cavity. So for that, we'll just run up through. Pulling it out, and then we can kind of run it however we need to get to our dash cavity. So now we have it up top and in. So just kind of show you the difference here. So you'll notice you have your factory speaker, which you removed, and your new MB Quart speaker. So this is a basic dual cone speaker. Now you'll have a true coaxial type speaker. Again, better sound, better frequency response, and an overall just better speaker. So let's go ahead, get our new MB Quart speaker installed. So process is pretty simple. We have our speaker wires up. It's got all the notches that you need for that. But here we have 2 female spade ends, a larger and a smaller. Larger one will go on the larger tab, and the smaller will go on the smaller tab. Just make sure you have them all the way. Give them a little tug, and then you'll actually be able just to maneuver it and drop it in the dash into the factory location. Once you get it in its correct place, go ahead and grab 2 of your screws, get them started. And then you can grab your 7mm socket and go ahead and get that tightened down. When tightening these bolts, you want to be careful that you don't hit your windshield with whatever you're using. All right, so now we got that tight. So our last step in finishing this side of the speaker installation, we're going to grab our included speaker harness bundle, get that undone. Now you'll notice that these are exactly as the factory are, and they have tags on it that say front right, front left. The reason for that is because it is already pre-terminated on the other side to plug directly in to the MB Quart amplifier that we're going to be installing underneath the passenger seat. The other reason they do this is so you can do this install on any Jeep JL, whether it's premium audio or base audio. They give you the ability to just run this and not disturb any of the factory wiring. So now we're going to find our plug that says front left and find our speaker plug that is coming off of our enclosure. Get that plugged in, making sure we hear a click. Give a little tug, make sure it is fully seated. So next step, we're actually going to run the cable around and then get it to the center console area for now until we go to our passenger side and get that speaker all installed. So I'll show you how to kind of get that into here. So let's do that. So now taking my 4-pin, which will plug into our MB Quart amplifier, we're just going to feed it through into the middle. Till it comes out for our center console, and then go ahead and just continue to pull till everything is through. So now everything is through. So now you can wire tie these wires if you so choose now, or you can wait until reassembly, which is what I'm going to do. I'm going to wait till then and get everything wire tied and cleaned up at one time. So now we have our cabling in the center console. We have our front lower speaker mounted and secured. We have our top dash speaker mounted and secured. So now we can actually go ahead, move to the passenger side, get that speaker pod installed as well as the dash speaker installed, and finish running our wire to that. So now we're ready to install the passenger side. I have my new speaker pod, I have my new dash speaker. So this is very, very similar to doing the driver's side. So go ahead, get your speaker pod installed and in the general area. So we'll get it lined up here. There we go. Hold it in place. Go ahead and get those screws started in there. Go ahead and get this one on top started. There we go. Now get the bottom one started. There you go. So now that'll kind of sit there. Now we'll just want to gently, just like the driver's side, just screw it in just a little bit. Make sure it holds. There we go. Now we can go ahead and get the side screw lined up and screwed in. All right, so now we're going to go ahead, line the hole up, and then just... So now that's all nice and tight. Now we can go ahead and finish tightening the top and bottom bolts. So now our speaker pod is securely installed. So from there, just make sure our speaker plugs are out. And now we can go ahead and begin running our top dash speaker wire. So now we will take our top dash speaker wires, feed them up into the top of the dash. So you can go ahead and start running that up above the pod, bringing it up through the area of the vent. So now we have it here, and then just get it up and around. And grab it, and then we will bring it out the area where our dash speaker was set. So from there, again, just like the driver's side, the larger plug will go on the larger tab, smaller plug on the smaller tab. Make sure you always give a little pull, make sure it's not going to pull right off. Then we can go ahead and drop our speaker down in, making sure we line up the speaker in the dash and making sure it's secure. So next, go ahead, grab 2 of your screws, get those started. And then we'll grab our 7mm socket and get those tightened. Again, you want to be careful with your windshield while tightening these. One tiny slip could cost you a new windshield. Now both of those are tightened. They won't rattle. So next we need to continue running our speaker wire plug over to this side of the dash. Now we want to make sure while we're running through the center dash cavity that we don't interfere with any of the factory plugs. So we're going to go ahead, slide it behind factory wiring harness, then get it behind these 2 factory wiring harnesses, kind of pull through, then we're just going to run it right beside. You can reach right in and grab it. So now we'll just gently pull it to the passenger side. Making sure it's not in the way for any of the factory wiring. So from there, we're going to just double check, make sure it says front right, which is our passenger side. We're going to find our plug coming off of our new MB Quart speaker pod. We can go ahead and get that plugged in. So we have a lot of extra wire. Again, you can go ahead and wire tie some of this up out of the way if you choose now, or during reassembly, which is what I'm going to do. So one last thing I want to do before we move on to the rear sound bars is I'm going to go ahead, grab this, drop it behind the glove box, and just pull it out through the bottom. And again, like I said, I'm going to finish up all of my wire tying and everything on reassembly, but now I have my speaker wire to my amplifier in the general area of where my amplifiers are going to go. So now that that's all done, we can go ahead, move on to the rear sound bars, and I'm going to show you both options, whether it's using your OEM and cutting the 6x9s in, or choosing the optional upgrade of the MB Quart enclosure with the 4 8-inch RGB speakers. So MB Quart has given you 2 options to upgrade your soundbar. First, we have the factory soundbar cut-in kit with the 6x9s that is included in the Stage 6 kit, or we have 2 different options for adding a new soundbar. So this particular one here is 4 horn speakers with RGB. They also have the 4 8-inch coaxial speakers with RGB, and you can also get both of these without the RGB upgrade. So we are going to install the OEM cut-in kit upgrade, but I'm going to show you also how to install the upgraded 4 8-inch soundbar. So first things with the cut-in kit, you're going to receive the overhead plug-in wiring harness. So this will plug in directly to your OEM soundbar. And again, it has the 4-pin pre-terminated Molex on the other end to plug directly into the amplifier. So for that, we'll just plug it right in. But first, let's go ahead and show you how to install the 4 8-inch soundbar upgrade. So this thing is pretty nice. It comes with your wiring harness already installed, again with the pre-terminated 4-pin Molex to plug directly into the amp, and then it has your 4 RGB wires. One thing to remember about RGB is you can either wire it to just have one color on, or you can order the optional RGB controller and wire it in, and then you'll have the ability to do all of the colors. So let's go ahead, get this up and installed. For this part of the installation, it is extremely helpful to have a second person to hold it up straight and get the 6 10mm bolts into it. So let's go ahead. I'm going to grab one of my guys and we're going to get this installed for you. So now we have our MB Quart 4.8 horn speaker with RGB ready to go up. So we're going to make sure we have one of our 10mm bolts in hand. Go ahead and lift it up again with a partner. Slide it into position and we're going to start our first bolt. So once that's up there, the soundbar is going to kind of hold on by itself. Go ahead and grab our other 2 bolts, get those started. Now that all 3 are started, we can go ahead, getting those tightened up. So now my side is tight. Go ahead and have whoever's helping you tighten the other side. So just give it a little bit of a pull, make sure it's not going to just fall right out. So next step, we're going to be running our cabling. So we're just going to follow the factory wires along the top and then run it down our B pillar towards our amplifiers. I am not going to be keeping this one in, just wanted to kind of show you what it looked like inside the vehicle when it is up. So now let's go ahead, pull this one down. I'm going to grab the factory soundbar with the upgraded 6x9s already installed, and we're going to get that up in there so you can kind of see how that looks as well. So I have my factory soundbar. I'm going to get ready to install it. Go ahead and plug in your provided speaker harness. Again, just like the factory, it'll slide in and then push that tab in to lock it, making sure it doesn't unplug easily or at all. So from here, again, if you need someone to help you, please have them help you. We'll go ahead and get it into position. So getting it up, start the bolts. So 3 on the driver's side, 3 on the passenger side. So now we have all of 6 of our bolts in. We can go ahead and get them tightened down. Now we have all 6 of our bolts tightened down. Just give a little tug on it, make sure it's not going to go anywhere. We can go ahead and plug our Christmas trees back in. We're going to take the factory plug that was plugged in and just kind of keep it up there. And then we have our light plug. So the wiring of both of the sound bars that you have the option to do will wire as far as in the vehicle the exact same way. The only difference will be adding that RGB wiring later down the road. So let's go ahead, get all of our wire run and get it into our passenger underseat area for where our amps are going to go. So before we finish running our rear soundbar wiring, I'm going to quickly show you how to remove the lower passenger kick panel. It's pretty easy. If you remove your doors often, you probably already have the harness for the door removed. So this one is already off, so you can just kind of slide that out of the way. There'll be a 10mm bolt holding the top part of the kick panel on. We're just going to go ahead and get that removed. So removing that. And so from there, you just kind of pull out and start getting it around all of the metal bits. And then you can kind of pull out towards the driver's side and remove it. And then just slide it right out, keep that in a safe place. Now what that will allow us to do is actually lift up some of the carpets to get these wires run when we're ready. So from there, once our kick panel is removed, we can actually start running and wire tying, and I'm wire tying it now just to keep it up and out of the way. Run it down along the B pillar and into the area here where our amps are going to sit. So let's go ahead, get some wire ties on there and get them tightened up. So now let's begin running our soundbar harness. We're just going to run it here and then down the B pillar. So provided in the kit, they send you some wire ties. Just go ahead and kind of get them started. At a couple of places along the factory harness. So then you can go ahead and get it cleaned up, get it tightened up. Gonna add one more here. There we go. So now I have my wire. We can kind of feed it up through there. Let's go ahead and cut all the excess off of the wire ties. So now it's secured. So now from here, you can do this one of two ways. You can actually remove your B pillar if you so choose. It's just removing 2 bolts here and then removing your seat belt. Or you can slide it behind and along the side here, which is what I'm going to do. Usually the easiest way is just kind of get that, and then you'll just kind of gently pull out. So get that behind, slide it all the way. So now we're there. Now you can just gently slide that back in. Now again, same thing down below, just kind of slide it out and you'll be able to fish it the whole way down through. Just make sure it is 100% behind. And now we're behind our B pillar. So now we can finish running our rear soundbar wiring harness. We're going to pop the cover off the seat belt bolt here. Just pop it up and then pull towards the inside of the seat. Releasing that. Make sure you always replace any clips that may have popped off. So from there, that will allow us just to kind of pull this off and out of the way. So just release that. And then you can go ahead and finish running your wire back behind there. So now that's behind. Go ahead and drop it right there. Then you can pop that back on. Go ahead, pop your cover back on. So we have our rear soundbar wire, again, in the area of where our amplifiers are going to be. So now we have our front speakers completed. We have our soundbar completed with the harness run to our area. So next step is I'm going to show you whether you have a factory head unit or an aftermarket head unit, show you how to run the RCAs and remote, as well as if you have the factory unit, how to wire in the CH41 that's included in the bundle. So now it's time to get audio from our head unit to our amplifiers. So there's two different ways of doing this. If you have a factory radio, you're going to get the PAC CH41 module, which comes with your plug, as well as a subwoofer control wire, so that will be able to turn the sub up and down if you chose to either add a sub or replace your premium OEM sub. Secondly, if you have a aftermarket head unit already installed, you're going to plug directly into the RCAs. Now, that being said, so I have my aftermarket head unit here. You're going to use the provided RCAs that are in the kit. They are all pre-labeled with what they are going to plug into. So most aftermarket head units will have 3 sets of RCA pre-outs. Confirm, before you get really into it. So for any aftermarket head unit, you're going to find which is your front and find your front on your RCAs. Go ahead and plug them in. Now they should be normal colors, just make sure whatever you start with. So in this case, white goes to black, red goes to red. You have the same consistency through all of them. So from there we can grab our rear pre-out on our aftermarket head unit and then find our rear pre-out RCA. And again, red to red in this case and black to white. And then we can do our subwoofer. There's only one left. So sub, again, red to red, black to white. So now our RCAs are all plugged in. We have one more wire that we need to plug in. You're going to grab the blue wire. That is your remote wire. That will come in your MB Quart kit. Now, depending on your radio, what's in there, what you have. Now, they have a male bullet on one side. You're going to plug that into your remote output of your aftermarket head unit. So in this case, though, we are not using an aftermarket head unit, so we'll go ahead and unplug all of that. And I'm going to show you how to do it on the PAC module. So our PAC module also has 6 RCAs. On the bottom here, they're labeled. So subwoofer, rear, and front. It also has some dip switches and some connectors. Now that will be used for the actual harness here. Going back to the RCA pre-outs, go ahead, grab your pre-outs, and you can flip it over so you can see it. So we'll start out with our subwoofer. We have red and white. So just like with the aftermarket head unit, find our subwoofer, red to red, black to white. Next is rear. So here are my rears. Again, red to red, black to white. And then finally we will have our fronts. To our front, again, red to red, black to white. So now we have that all plugged in. Our RCAs are plugged in. Next, we're going to grab our harness. We're going to find our harness inside the dash cavity here. So from here, we just want to make sure we grab the female side. Now you'll notice there are some larger pins and some smaller pins. That lines up with this plug, smaller pins, larger pins. So go ahead and just plug directly in. Once you get it in, clip down, make sure that it is solid and it will not come off. So we have our plug. Now that's the white plug that will plug directly into our pack module. So what we're going to do in this case is we're actually going to fish this down into the dash and then into our glove box area right in this area. And that's where our pack module is going to live. So let's go ahead, just gently, so go over the metal brace. And you're just going to slide it in, and you can go. Now the hardest thing is trying to get this fuse holder to pass through, but once you get that slid in there, you should be able just to reach up and grab it. So we have it here. So now we'll just drop it down into the glove box area and kind of get it up and out of the way. So you'll also notice that on this harness is a blue with white wire. That will be for our remote wire, just like our aftermarket head unit. So now let's kind of get everything out of the way so we can plug in our factory head unit again. So that should be good there. So now that we have our plug down here, we can grab our pack module, get that plugged in. We can go ahead and grab our remote wire, get it ready to go. Go ahead and plug that in. So now we have our RCAs and remote plugged in. We have one last thing to do, and that is to run our subwoofer control wire. So what that will allow us to do is turn the subwoofer up and down at any time. Now this can be placed wherever you would like. You can drill it in, you can wire tie it somewhere, you can put it in your glove box, your center console, wherever you would like. Me personally, I like having easy access, but also not to drill a hole in my dash anywhere. So I'm gonna wire tie it underneath my driver's side dash. So for this, I'm just going to go ahead and run the wire with the speaker wire that I ran earlier. Kind of get it here and then get it in behind. There we go. And then pull it through. So then from there, we'll go ahead and plug it into our pack module. So there's only one spot it can go. It goes into the 2-pin right here. So get that plugged in. So now from here, I can actually set this and get it hidden away. Now you may have to get at it for some reason later down the road, or if you add an aftermarket radio and get rid of your factory radio. But so for now, I'm going to stick this in here, kind of get it back behind. And while I'm doing that, I'm going to go ahead and take my RCAs and my remote wire, get them untangled and the knot out of it. So now I have my RCAs and remote wire. I'm going to take them, drop them just behind the glove box here. Get that all pulled through. Now again, if you are thinking of upgrading the head unit at some point, you're going to want to keep some of this RCA kind of hidden in the glove box so that when that time comes, you can run your RCA and your remote up to your new aftermarket head unit. So I'm going to leave some slack in here and then go ahead, And just kind of secure that back here and get it put away for now. So from there, now we have our front speaker wires with the plug, we have our RCAs, and we have our remote. So from there, we can kind of pull out the carpet. So just pull and this plug will release, and you can just kind of peel it out from underneath the center console, pull it up. So from here, we'll go ahead and just kind of get everything lengthened out, and we can pull this carpet back down, and then we can start getting this run. So we'll actually go down. We're just going to lift up our rear seat vent, get that run underneath. And then there's another pin. You can pick that up and just gently slide our wiring underneath that, put that back down. So again, we just want to make sure we have enough for if and when we do an aftermarket head unit. So you can go ahead and get that slide back down. So now all of our wires are in the underneath area of the passenger seat. We can just set that back down. So now pull this pin here to lift up on the carpet for the back half of the seat, and we can lift this up, and we can go ahead and just get our rear soundbar wire run over with the rest of the speaker wire and RCAs. Kind of set that back down. So now we have all of our wire for our audio portion. So now to run our power wire, there's a grommet directly underneath the carpet. Pop that out, grab a razor knife. You're going to cut a little X in it, and I'm going to show you how to do that next. So we have our razor knife, we have our grommet. Like I said, you just need to cut an X in that grommet. So once you cut that, you should be able to get through there like that. So we're going to leave this out. I'm going to go grab the power wire bundle that I need, get that pushed in there, and then we can start running the wire towards the battery. So now I've got our power wire bundle that comes in the MB Quart kit. Now this will give you your power, your ground, as well as the 3 pre-terminated plugs for the amplifiers and our remote lead. So let's go ahead and get this started. So we're going to grab our power wire with our X that we already cut in our grommet. Go ahead and push that through. And we're going to drop that, run that down through there like such. So through the grommet and down. So from there, we can take our power wire, stick it into the hole, and just kind of feed it down through till we get to our grommet. And then now we need to just make sure we push our grommet back down through. So now that's pretty solid there. So we'll just feed just a hair more. So there we go, that's about right. So from there, the pre-terminated ground is already on. That's actually going to go to the factory ground along the transmission tunnel. So from there, just go ahead and run it underneath your vent, and then underneath any wiring to make sure it looks good. And we're going to end up right here. So for that, just grab your 10mm socket, remove the bolt, stick your ground on there, put the bolt right back on, and tighten it down. Now we have our power run through our grommet our ground is connected to the chassis of the vehicle. So now we can go ahead and actually physically run our power wire up to the front battery. I'm going to go ahead, if you have a light, it's a good time to use it underneath the hood. Okay, so now I have it here. So how that power wire is going to run is along the frame here, and then it's going to come up and end up about right in this area. What we're going to need for this portion of the installation is our wire ties, a set of crimpers, and a pair of side cutters to cut the wire ties. So let's go ahead, get the power wire up here, get the fuse connected to the power wire. Now, we will not hook it up to the battery just quite yet, but we're going to get it up in this area so we're ready to hook it up when that time comes. All right, now we're underneath the Jeep. So our power wire has come out of our grommet. We're going to run it along the frame behind this body mount, and then it will go up behind the wheel well trim and end up right where I showed you. So easiest thing to do is just kind of get it run up and over the body mount here. Pull it all the way through, and it will kind of rest on its own on top of the frame. So from there, just pull back your wheel well trim, and you'll notice that you can kind of feed it the whole way up. So if you have somebody to help you, grab it at the top. That's even better. If not, you can kind of just get it up there as best as you can, and then you may have to reach down. So now that should be up there. So now we can go ahead, get a wire tie on this cable harness here, just to keep it together. So now we're going to cut off the excess of that wire tie. And make sure you put back the wheel well trim. So now we'll go up to the top, grab our power wire up through, connect the fuse holder, and I'm going to show you how to do that next. So now our power wire has ended up just where we wanted it. So already connected and heat shrunk is a barrel connector. So we're going to grab our fuse holder. Let's go ahead and just make sure we pull out our fuse. So we'll pull out our fuse, set that up there. So now we just need to crimp our fuse holder into our barrel connector. So for that, just stick it into our barrel connector, grab our crimpers, go ahead and crimp it tight. Let's give a little pull on it, make sure it doesn't come loose. Now here, you can go ahead and wrap some electrical tape if you so choose and heat shrink it with a lighter or a butane torch. So it's going to sit in this general area once we get our power and ground back onto our battery. So I'm just going to leave this here, just let it sit. Keep the hood open, because once we start making our connections to our amplifier, then we can go ahead and hook up our power wire. So now it's time to start getting our amplifiers wired up. So I already mounted all of the amplifiers that we're going to use in this video to the amplifier mounting plate. So first I have my front 2-channel amplifier, my rear 2-channel amplifier, and then we will be adding a sub. So I added my subwoofer amplifier. Very simple install. It comes with the machine screws to mount each amplifier down. If you're only doing a stage 6 kit, you'll have these two amplifiers. And if you're doing the stage 6 kit with any of the add-on subwoofer options, you will have your third amplifier here. So as far as the rack, it will sit like this in the vehicle with the mounting holes towards the rear of the seat, and that will actually pinch it in and hold it down. So mounting is pretty simple. You don't actually do anything right now. We'll just kind of get all of our wiring out of the way. We'll go ahead and set it into place approximately where it's going to go. So there we be, in that general area there. So now as far as wiring it up, we have our 3 plugs as well as the plugs on the amplifiers. We have our front speaker wires, and we have our rear speaker wires. So here it's going to differ everybody with how they want to keep their wire management, so on and so forth. So this, I'm just going to start kind of plugging things in and kind of showing you and telling you how I'm going to do it. So first we have our RCAs and remote. So the RCAs are going to go on the back side of the amplifier. So I'm going to just run those underneath the amplifier bracket and kind of get them where they're going to end up. Next, I'm going to take my rear soundbar harness, run it underneath, and again, my middle amplifier is my rear amplifier, so get that plugged in. So then go ahead and grab my front speaker wire. The amplifier that is closest to the center console should be your front. Plug that in. Now I have my power wires. So since I'm right here, I can go ahead, plug in my subwoofer power wire, and then I can kind of fish that underneath. Plug in my rear amplifier, and then my front amplifier. So now everything is plugged in. I have a couple of things. I have my airbag harness for my seat there. So I still have 2 other things left. I have my subwoofer wire for my subwoofer amplifier, and I have my remote wire. So the remote wire will plug into the blue wire that comes off of the power harness. So we'll go ahead, run that underneath here, and then plug that in, making sure it's completely connected. So now it's time for a little bit of wire management. So again, you can do that however you would like. The cleaner the better. So we'll just kind of start getting some stuff put away. Get some of our wires cleaned up. Go ahead and grab wire ties as necessary. So wire tie there. And go ahead and wire tie our speaker wires here and our powers. And then we can wrap up the rest of this remote wire Kind of get that bundled up and then down with the rest of the stuff. Again, most of this stuff you're never going to see because we still have to fold the carpet back over top. So now for plugging in the RCAs, again, they're labeled and we know how we have them run. So we have our front amplifier. So looking at that, we have left on top, right on the bottom. We know that red on these RCAs is right and black is left. So we'll go ahead and plug those in accordingly. So red on the bottom, black on the top. Next we'll find our rear wires. And again, red on the bottom, black on the top. And as far as the subwoofer, same, red on the bottom, black on the top. So you can kind of clean these up again however you would like. Get it nice and neat. So now only thing we have left again now is our subwoofer wire. So now we can actually go ahead, you can fold your carpet back down, get it back into place, and then you're going to go under your there and go ahead and get all the stuff back under the center console. Get that pushed back in. So again, if you're only doing the stage 6, you're not adding a subwoofer at this time. Your amplifier is done. For us, we're going to go ahead and do both the premium OEM subwoofer upgrade as well as the tailgate subwoofer upgrade. So we're going to go ahead, show you how to do both of those and run the wire up to the subwoofer amplifier. Once that's all done, we're going to start putting our Jeep all back together. So I just want to take a moment and go back over the optional sub solutions that MB Quart has created for the JL Jeep. First is the premium OEM replacement subwoofer that goes directly where your factory subwoofer was. And then this is the tailgate subwoofer. It's a 12-inch sub that is ported. So the premium is your factory sub, so that goes in the corner here. And then the new tailgate sub will go right here. So first I'm going to show you how to prep your tailgate subwoofer, and then we'll go ahead and get it all installed. So first things first we need to do is we need to remove the subwoofer that's already in here. Now they only put 4 screws in there to make it a little bit easier. So you're going to go ahead, grab your T20 Torx and just remove those 4 screws. So once those are removed, you can actually get the subwoofer out. It's not plugged in yet, but the cabling is there. So set that to the side. So from there, we're actually going to go ahead, flip it over. You'll notice 6 holes that are already pre-drilled in there. So we're actually going to want to cover up these 4 holes. So we'll take the provided rubber grommets and just kind of push them in there. Sometimes you have to get them a little wet, get a little soap on there to get them all the way down in, but they will absolutely go in. So these rubber grommets also help with if it's sitting on the plastic so it doesn't rattle. So now that we've got them in, go ahead, flip it back over. Just make sure that they're in. So from there, we need to grab our grill. Our grill will go on here like such. So, but we need to put on the gasket. So inside one of the baggies is this gasket material. You can go ahead and just push it in like that. Now this may take a few minutes to do, but that'll keep the plastic from rattling against each other. It will tend to want to pop out, so just take your time. But you want to make sure that you have this right so it doesn't pop out on you later down the road. That's exactly what may happen if it's not all the way down. So again, just keep working it until it's all the way in and it stays. Once it's in, go ahead, grab a knife, just cut it, and then get it in and finalized. So now we're all the way in. I have a little bit extra. So now we can go ahead and set this to the side, and I'll actually get the table out of the way. We're going to go ahead and show you what needs to happen to get the subwoofer enclosure mounted on the tailgate. So at the tailgate, we need to first remove the trail rail ready cover, and then we'll actually also have to remove this to drill 2 small holes into it. So first we'll go ahead, grab our panel popper tool, and just gently pop it out till it removes. And then from there, we'll go ahead and get behind the actual plastic panel and start removing that. So just gently prying. They are plastic clips that hold it in. So once we have that out, we can hold it out and just gently get under there, pry it top and bottom, and pop it out. Now we've lost some of the clips, have stayed in, so just go ahead and grab those out just by sticking your panel popper up and then a fingernail up top. Till it comes out. And we'll put those on before we're finished. So next on here, there is a dimple on this side and a dimple on this side, right here. So right there and right there. So we are going to go ahead and drill a 1/2 inch hole directly through both of those dimples. What that will allow us to do is to get our standoffs from our factory holes to come through and actually hold our enclosure on. So let's go ahead, get the 1/2 inch holes drilled there. So again, first one goes right here. Now I'm using a step bit which goes up to a 1/2 inch. So we can just go ahead and drill the whole way through. And then again, right here. So go ahead and drill that. So just to be sure, you want to try and just put your in there. So I need to go just a hair more on both of them. So now let's just open them up a little bit more until we get that perfect hole. Okay, perfect. Goes through both. So now we can go ahead and reinstall the panel. Just make sure everything's back where it should be. So you'll notice once we have our plate back on, the 2 holes that we drilled coincide with some factory threads. So that's what we'll be mounting our L brackets into. So let's go ahead, grab those L brackets and get those mounted. So for this part of the install, we'll need the L bracket, we'll need the Allen head bolt, and we'll need the standoff. So what we're going to do is drop our Allen head down through, put our standoff on, and then go ahead, get your Allen in there. Go ahead and start getting that turned in. So we're not going to tighten it all the way down just yet, but we're going to get it in there. Now let's go ahead, get this one in. And again, same thing on the other side. We'll have the L bracket, we'll have the flat Allen head bolt and the standoff. So go ahead and get that dropped in. So into the hole, into the standoff. Get that tightened up. So you want to make sure they're pretty flat before completely tightening them, because what will happen is we'll actually set the enclosure down on this. There'll be a bolt that holds into the enclosure from the L bracket, and then we'll put 2 more bolts up in the top. So let's go ahead and get that tightened down all the way, making sure it's as straight as possible. Okay, so now we have that installed. We can go ahead, grab the enclosure. We're also going to want to grab the 2 10mm bolts and the standoffs that go with that one for the top bolts. So on the bottom of the enclosure, this is where those 2 L brackets will bolt into. You want to make sure everything's out of the way. Just set it in the general area of where it's going to be. So we'll look under. Yep, right around there. So next step is to get our bolts and our standoffs through. So again, one is right about here. The other is on the inside of the enclosure on the far side. So from here, we'll go ahead, get our bolt in, get our standoff on, line it up just by looking down on it. So the second one is going to be a bit harder because we actually have to reach into the enclosure, find the hole, then we have to get our standoff on, and then line it up with the actual factory hole. So now that I'm there, so now I'm in and on. So now from there, we're going to grab our 10mm socket, go ahead and tighten that down. We're also then going to put on our bolts to hold the bottom. And then I'll show you how to install the subwoofer, install the grill, and then run the speaker wire. So now I have my 10mm, go ahead and get these 2 both tightened down. And again, this one's a bit of a pain to get to, but you can get at it. Couple more turns to tighten it up. Now that side's on. Now we can go ahead and get this front one. Now the top's tight. Now we can go ahead and put our 2 T40 bolts that are included in the bundle in, and they go on the very, very bottom. One on that side. And then one on that side. So now our enclosure is completely tight to the tailgate. So next we need to plug in our subwoofer, screw it in, and then put our grill on. So let's get that done now. So on our subwoofer, we have positive terminal and the negative terminal. We'll plug in our red to positive, black to negative. Get both of those plugged in. And then we'll place our subwoofer into the enclosure, trying to line it up as best as possible with the pre-drilled holes. So I have them all lined up. So now I'm going to go ahead and grab the 8 T20 screws to screw that back in. So here's where you kind of need to be careful. You don't want to poke a hole in the subwoofer. You don't want to jam it. You don't want to go too fast. So just take your time. It's not that big of a deal. So again, just line up the holes. Start the first one if you can by hand. If not, keep something in front of it to kind of protect it, but don't screw it all the way in just yet. Move to one of the bottom ones. So then you can go ahead, get that all screwed in. Now just repeat that process the whole way around. Again, just keep going around. Getting them all in. And the last one. Okay, now our subwoofer's in. Now it's time to put the grill that we've already prepared with the gasket material. So they'll go here. Again, there's pre-drilled holes, 6 of them, to line up exactly with the grill. And my 6 holes. So let's go ahead and just get one kind of in and started. So we got that one started there. Go ahead and get another one started. So then we can do the same for all of them now. Now you don't want to over tighten these. Now we have our tailgate subwoofer completely installed. Last thing that we need to do is grab the subwoofer extension wire, run that all the way front to where our subwoofer amp is underneath the passenger seat. So let's grab that sub wire and get that run. So now we're ready to run our subwoofer wire up front. So we're going to have our subwoofer cable that is provided by MB Quart, some wire ties, a pair of cutters. So I'm going to go along all the factory wiring, go behind, again with the factory wiring towards the rear door. So let's go ahead, get it plugged in. So this plugs in like such. And it's already got spider wrap on it. So I'm just going to go ahead, kind of tuck it neatly behind the factory. Put a little wire tie on there just to hold it there. Give myself just a little bit of slack. Neatly tuck it behind there. Again, another wire tie. Go ahead, cut the extra off. And then let's roll that behind. So there we go. So from there, I'm going to come up along, coming this way. So we're just going to slip it right behind the plastic panel here. We have our connection right there. So we'll go ahead, grab another wire tie, zip tie that in. So again, just keeping our wire nice and neat. Go ahead and snip that off. Going around with the factory wiring, we'll go ahead and grab another wire tie back here. Just keeping it nice and clean all the way through. And then finally we can move this out of the way, continue and grab one more wire tie right at the very end. So once that is done, we're gonna leave this out here, and then we will continue to run the wire the rest of the way down to our front seat. So now we'll have this kind of hanging out, kind of push this all back in for now. So the next thing we'll do is from here, we'll go to the rear passenger door and run it down through the door area, past the B-pillar, and into the area which our amplifiers are. So now it's time to upgrade our OEM subwoofer with MB Quart's OEM Upgrade Plus. So the easiest thing to do is once you remove it, set it on a table. We're going to go ahead and remove the 8 3/16 bolts holding in both the grill and the sub. So go ahead, start with that first. And we will reuse this factory grill on top of our MB Quart subwoofer. Now our ring can come off. Gonna go ahead and grab our pry tool and just kind of get the subwoofer loosened up. And then cool. So now that that is loose, we're gonna go ahead and flip it upside down. There is one bolt right in the middle. That is a T20. So go ahead and pull that bolt out. Now our sub should fall out at the bottom. So now our sub is out. Now they use a quad coil sub, so you'll just have to remove all 4 plugs. There we go. See a little bit of the difference in size of those speakers. So now we want to go ahead and remove this rubber grommet, and then we can pull all the wires through. So we pull those through. So MB Quart has provided you with a new harness. So you'll see one side has that grommet already on it. So we'll go ahead, stick the side with the speaker terminal connectors through, and then just gently push that grommet in, making sure it's completely in and sealed. Now this side is what we will run to the front of the vehicle, to where our amp rack is underneath the passenger seat. But as of for right now, we can just leave it kind of sit there. So now flipping it back over, now we have our speaker terminals. Go ahead and grab our new MB Quart subwoofer. So there are markings on the subwoofer. They are very hard to see. In this case, this is positive, this is negative. So we're going to plug our red in on this side and our black in on this side. So before we put our subwoofer into the enclosure, we'll grab a razor blade or a pair of cutters, something. There are little notches here that need to be removed. So we'll just gently cut them out of the way. So let's just test fit it, make sure that we're good. So now we're good. We just want to make sure that the holes line up. So next, we need to remove our grill from our OEM subwoofer. So that we're just going to just give a little bit of a pry on it, kind of get our hands underneath it and work our way. There's two spots where the grill is mounted. So just kind of work our way around till we can get it out. There we go, got it out. And you can usually just pull it out of the other side. If you've bent it like I did, just, you know, kind of get it tapped back into place. So now I've got it back into place. Can set that right on top. Now, Quart does provide you with a new sticker that you can go ahead and place on here to remove the OEM one. You're just going to want to kind of scrape off the glue that they use. You can use a grinder, you can, you know, do however you would like. Just want to try to get most of that glue removed, and then you can grab your pry tool and just gently get it under there and remove it without damaging it. So on the other side of our new logo, just a piece of double-sided tape. Pull the double-sided tape off, line it up, and press it on. So now that that's all done, we can go ahead, get our speaker grill lined up, grab our OEM grill, get that lined up as well, then grab a couple of our bolts just to get them started. Make sure we're in the correct position. Then go ahead and get the rest of these started. There you go. Perfect. So now our 3/16, go ahead and tighten them all the way down. So now we have one last step before we've completed the OEM upgrade subwoofer installation. So go ahead, flip it back on its back, and they actually have provided the factory bolt hole to go right back into the new subwoofer. So you can go ahead and get that started by hand. Grab your T20. Get that all tightened down. And you have replaced your OEM subwoofer. So now that our subwoofer is installed, I can show you how to go ahead and install it in your Jeep JL. So let's go ahead and install our Quart Premium Replacement Subwoofer. Again, that'll replace your factory subwoofer. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna just pop off the rubber gasketing here just to give us a little more room. And we've already pre-installed the subwoofer in the enclosure. So all we have to do, set it in, lock it in, put our panels back on, and then run our wire. So let's begin. We'll get this closed up just a hair, pull off our gasket. There we go. So we have our full enclosure with our wire. Bring it in. Set it gently. So we just want to kind of get it lined up to approximately where it goes. Kind of get it in that area. Make sure we're not pushing too hard on anything quite yet. Again, making sure everything is kind of lined up and out of the way. So we can just kind of push it in. Now there'll be a couple of plugs that have to get set. So once you push them in, they will automatically lock in. Again, you want to watch these plastic pieces here. Make sure that they are locking in together like that. Then we move more towards the back of the enclosure. Let's make sure our speaker wire is accessible so we can run it. So again, we'll just kind of give it a little push. Now it's all locked in. So now we can go ahead and put our seat belt cover back in, just pushing that down. So now we're solidly in, not loose. Go ahead and put our gasket back over. We'll make sure that that is pushed down. So now from there, we're almost done with this portion, so we can actually go ahead and put something back together. We'll put back together the rear portion of the Jeep, and then we'll finish running our speaker wire up towards our amps. So first, we'll go ahead, get our gasket lined back up, get it all pushed back in, nice and neat. So now that's all back on. Let's just check. Yep, back in. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to grab our side piece, which we removed, that was held in by the 3 T40s. Set that into place and just line it up with the holes in the bottom of the floor. Then we can go ahead and drop our cargo holds down. Just get those started by hand. So now we've got those started, we can go ahead, grab our impact driver, get those tightened down and closed up. Next, after that, we'll go ahead, we can slide in our top cover and put in our holder for all of our bolts for our roof and our doors and everything like that. So let's do that now. Close that one up, fold it down. Close that up. There we go. So now those are all reinstalled. Go ahead and grab that top cover plate. Go ahead and reinstall this. It will slot on the passenger side. And then just push down. And then as far as the cover, it will ride on those 2 side pieces. So just gently get it in there, making sure it passes over. And it sits flat. So now we are done with the installation of the Quart Premium Upgrade Subwoofer. So now we'll take our speaker wires and get it run up to the front. Let's continue running our subwoofer wire. In my case, I'm running 2 subwoofer wires because I have both the premium replacement and the tailgate sub. You normally will only have one or the other, but in any case, so first thing we're going to want to do, grab our panel tool and just get this carpet out from behind. So we just kind of want to get that pulled up and under out from everything. Kind of get that run like so. Go ahead and grab a wire tie and wire tie as you go. So we'll get one there. And then one down a little bit lower here. get our ends cut off here. So then from here we'll go around and lift up on the trim panel, and you'll just be able to gently run it underneath. You may have to use a pry tool of some sort just to lift up. We're going to continue the whole way. Till we're at the end here. So then we can go ahead and just tuck the carpet back into place. There we go. We're all tucked back into place. I can grab our wire ties, come up to the passenger front door. So now we're here at the passenger front seat. We have, in our case, both our cables run all the way up front. We have our subwoofer cable here. We're going to go ahead and just plug in our OEM replacement sub first. So get that plugged in. Go ahead and get everything else packed up and, hidden away for now. I'm going to leave the wires accessible so I can switch them back and forth just to see which sub I actually enjoy more. So let's just finish. We can hide this wire a little bit better for now. So now I have both wires at my disposal. I can just unplug and then replug whichever one I want in. So just like that. So now that we have everything wired up, we have our subwoofers wired up, we have our soundbar done, we have our front speakers, both our dash and our upper dash all done. We have our amplifiers wired. So now we can go ahead and start putting everything back together. You can do this in any order you choose. I'm going to start with the soundbar area, get everything done there, get all my trim panels on the top of the roof back in, and then I'm going to start replacing all the screws on the dash. So let's begin reassembly, starting with the soundbar area. So first we're going to go ahead and grab that main piece, get everything lined up. Want to make sure we get everything in. Then we'll go ahead and grab our side corner piece. Again, we need to slide that under and just line it up, pushing everything in and remembering to get that tab back in the front part. Then we can grab our rear piece. And slide that one in, lining it all up and clipping it back into place. So once everything is back in, we can go ahead and get all of our screws back in all of the spots where we removed them originally. So let's go ahead, get those screws back in. So now we've got our screw gun, we can go ahead and get all of these back in. You just want to make sure everything is lined up. Go ahead and get them all screwed in. So now we've gotten all of them in the back. We can move to the front and get those screwed in. So now let's just make sure that the passenger front door one snaps back into place. There we go. Then we can grab our screws, go ahead and get them back on. And then the two on the top. And now we're done with the passenger side. We can move over to the driver's side and then get our final 3 bolts into this. And then we can't forget to put in our overhead light. So now let's move on to the driver's side. We're going to replace our piece here. And we'll go ahead, slide this piece in. There we go. So let's go ahead and start getting them all screwed in. And let's go ahead and get the ones up top, starting with this one. And the second one. So now that these are all done, we can move to the front driver's seat area. So now moving to the front, making sure we push this pin in, making sure it's lined up, get that plugged in, and then get our roof trim back on. Now we can go ahead, throw in those screws. So we got the 2 here. Go ahead and replace the 2 up top, and then the 3 going across the actual soundbar area. Now those 2 are in. We can move to the top, get those 3, and then we're done with all of the roof trim. So now we have 3 screws left to put in. They'll go in this top piece. So starting wherever you would like. Get the first one. The second one. And the last one. So now we're done with all of the trim on the roof. Well, now we can jump back in to either the passenger or the driver's side and begin putting that dash back together. So before we begin reassembly of our passenger side dash, we want to take a moment, just kind of look everything over, make sure we have all of our parts and our screws and our bolts. So the airbag is a very important piece, but prior to putting the airbag in, we need to get 3 screws back in, here, here, and here. So let's go ahead and get those 3 in, get our airbag fitted back on, plugged in, and bolted back up. So let's go ahead and grab those. So now we have all 3 of those back in. We can grab our airbag. Want to make sure that the airbag plug drops down. And then we can slide it gently into place, pushing it in. So now we'll have these 4 and these 2 up top to bolt back in. So let's get those done. Now that all those are bolted back in, we need to, again, make sure we re-plug in the airbag, and then we put the two 13mm bolts back into the airbag to hold it securely. So let's make sure we have our bolts. I have my harness here, so let's go ahead, get those plugged back in and bolted back together. So the next step is we're going to replace the two 13mm bolts onto the airbag. First one goes right here. Second one will go right in here. So let's go ahead, get that bolted back in. Now that the airbag is back in, we can go ahead and get the rest of our screws back into our dash. So continuing on with the reassembly of our Jeep, we've got our airbag plugged back in and bolted back to the dash. So now we need to go ahead and put the rest of the screws back in the bottom of the glove box area and on the side panel, as well as get our grab handle and our cover plate back on. So I'm going to start by putting in the 3 screws below the glove box. Then we'll go ahead and get the cover plate back on, and then the grab handle. So let's go ahead and begin that now. One thing you want to make sure is there's a locator pin on the inside of the glove box. You want to make sure that that is in the hole, otherwise your glove box will not line up correctly. So once you have that all located, you can go ahead and finish. So now we have our 3 screws in the lower part of the glove box. Go ahead and grab our cover plate here with the little airbag marker on it. So you'll notice on the cover plate, there is a small catch on it. It'll go right below this pin right here. Very hard to see, but it just slides in there. So you're just gonna slide it in. Now it's locked in there, and then just go ahead, line it up, and push it on. So from there, we can go ahead and put our grab handle in. That is going to be the two 10mm bolts. So switch out there. Go ahead and line this up. So there's that one, and then just go ahead and bolt it in. So make sure it's nice and tight. Then grab our cover for the corner here, and you're going to slip it in on the passenger side and then lock it in. So that's in. So now that all of that is done, we can go ahead, grab our glove box, get our glove box reconnected and in, and then we'll move over to the 5 remaining screws on the side panel. So glove box has couple of hooks on it. Go ahead and hook it in, lift it up till you get to your catch. You're gonna want to reinstall your catch just like you removed it, like that, and then close it. Always check it, make sure that it doesn't just slam down, it slowly comes down. And we're done with the glove box. So now we can move on to the 5 screws on the side panel and then get that cover on, as well as go ahead and get our dash speaker cover on. So now moving on to the side panel, I have my 5 screws. We're going to go ahead and get them in. Just remember, the very bottom screw is the one that we're going to need to use our small 7mm wrench to get that all tight. So let's get these done now. And the last one, we're going to kind of get in there and start by hand. And then we'll grab our wrench and just get it tightened the rest of the way down. And just to make sure, there we go, we're tight. Now we can grab our trim panel for the side, just slide it in behind, get it lined up, and push it all in. So now we have this mostly all done. Last thing we need to do, we can go ahead and get our kick panel back on. So now moving on to the kick panel, you can put it on now if you're afraid of potentially scratching it. If you removed your seat, you can wait, put your seat in, then put this on, but I'm going to show you how to put this on in either case. So just gently sliding the panel in. You want to make sure your door connector is out of the way. Just kind of line it up. You want to make sure that the harness is inside, and then you can kind of just line it up. Now you'll see some of these little white pins. They'll just click in, push in, making sure you hear those clicks. Do that the whole way around. Making sure we're 100% in. And then we're going to grab our little 10mm nut. That little 10mm on, tighten it down. So now if you are ready to go ahead and clip everything back together, you can go ahead and do that now. I'm going to wait until after my seat's in and I'm all tidied back up. So now passenger side is done. We can go ahead and move to the driver's side, get all that back together, and then we'll move to reinstalling the center console and the radio. So now moving over to the driver's side, the first thing that we're going to do is get our dash brace reinstalled. That is our dash brace that we removed. Now you want to be careful. There are two separate types of screws that hold in this dash brace. You have a coarse thread and a fine thread. The coarse thread are going to go up in the top of the dash, as well as the corner of the dash, and the fine thread will go towards the center console, and then it will go up into the bottom of the dash brace that we install. So let's go ahead, get this installed, get these two coarse bolts installed, and then we can move over to the fine thread. So for that, we need our 8mm with some sort of extension. Get our dash brace set in. Get this in there somehow. Get it set on our screw gun or socket and just get that bolted in. And we still have a little bit of movement there to get that bolt up in. Grab our other one. So now that's solid. So now we can switch over to our 10mm, grab our fine thread, get that one locked in, and then this one will go from the bottom up. So start it by hand so we don't cross thread it. So now everything's nice and tight. We don't have to worry about anything else. So from there, if you haven't already done it, we need to finish running our subwoofer control knob. So in my case, I'm going to run it underneath and wire tie it just generally out of the way. If you want to drill a hole, place it somewhere else, you may absolutely do that. You can go ahead and place it anywhere that it will reach. But for me, I'm going to go ahead and run it behind the center console and just finish it right in this general area. The sub control knob is a personal preference for where you would like to have it. So you can kind of put it wherever you would like. But we're going to go ahead and just run it behind the plastic. And then drop it down through. And just keep it in this general area for now. And we'll clean up that when we get to the center console. So this way, I can just wire tie it wherever. I can hide it underneath the carpet if I'm not going to use it all that much. Again, personal preference, you can put it wherever you would like. So now with that out of the way, we can go ahead and begin reassembling our driver's side dash. So first thing we want to do is start and reinstall our GPS antenna. Pretty simple. It can only go in one way. Plug it in, make sure it's clicked in. We're going to just slide it back in our dash. Line it up with the holes and the screw that are in there. And get it mounted. There we go. Grab one single screw. Get that mounted. Now you just want to obviously double check. There is a locator pin in here, so you can't really get it off kilter. Next, we're going to grab our headlight and speaker grill assembly. Go ahead and get the headlight plugged back in. Making sure we push the red in so it locks. Once our headlight is plugged back in, we're just going to get it into place. And then we will reinstall the 4 screws on the inside that hold it up, and then we can go ahead and get the screws on the side here. So let's start by just getting one put in. So now that one's in. We can go ahead and get the rest of them. Get the top here. And inside the steering wheel. And then down low. So then we'll have some screws to put on the side here. So you can go ahead and grab those. Now, just like the passenger side, we have one on the inside. So we're going to start that one by hand and then use our 7mm wrench to get that all tight. Just make sure. There we go. And then we also have one more that sits on this back corner here. Just start that by hand, get it in as far as you can. Then we'll grab our small little wrench. And get that tightened up. So from there, we can go ahead and reinstall our dash and speedometer bezel. So the one thing you want to make sure is that when you pulled that top piece off, if any of those little metal clips stayed in the dash bezel, go ahead, take your time now, get them all out, get them reinstalled on the top trim piece so we can go ahead and get that all situated. Now this is the trim piece that those metal clips will usually stay in. Again, just make sure you get those out and get them reattached to the top piece. So this 4 screws at the top, and then it will click in through the bottom. So we'll go ahead and just place that on gently, line it up, and then get it pushed in. So now it is back on. We'll go ahead and get the 4 screws. So the first one, you want to be careful that you don't slip off the dash and scratch your bezel. If you feel more comfortable using a hand Phillips head screwdriver, please go ahead. So now we have those 4 in. We can go ahead and move over to the center dash and the center console. Start getting those things plugged back in. Again, refer back to the picture you should have taken with disassembly for reassembly, but let's go ahead and get those all plugged back in and bolted back together. So to begin with reassembly of the center console area, this is the top dash trim piece that you have hopefully by now repaired and fixed all of the metal clips if any came off. So we'll go ahead and get that on first. Just want to line it up whole way across the dash, making sure that the Phillips head screw lines up with behind the radio, and then you can just kind of get it pushed on the whole way across. Once that is on, at this point we can go ahead and grab our dash speaker grill and just set that in place and push that down. We have, again, 1 screw that we need to screw in right in the center. Go ahead and grab our screw gun and get that one screwed in. So from there, we can go ahead and get all of our plugs plugged in to our lower center dash. Now, you may not have all the plugs we have here. This is a Rubicon, so we have our disconnects as well as our auxiliary switches already built in. You may just have a pocket here. Depends on the model and of your Jeep. So let's go ahead, get all that plugged into the bottom center of the dash, get it screwed back in, and then we can move back up to the head unit. So now let's go ahead, get everything plugged in and get it back into the dash. Just make sure anything you unplugged in the disassembly, we make sure we plug back in. So now we have everything plugged back in to our panel. Go ahead and gently lower it down into place and then just push it in. So again, there's 1 Phillips head screw that holds that in. You should have 1 extra plug that we're going to continue to leave out. That's going to be for our heater controls. Get that screwed in. So from here, now we can move on to the actual reinstalling the factory radio. So we'll go ahead, grab our radio, make sure it's in the correct position, like this. So we can start plugging all of our harnesses in. So double check. So we have some bigger pins and smaller. Just make sure they are facing the same way. Stick it in. And then go ahead and close and lock. So from there, we'll go ahead and grab all of our harnesses. Again, if you took a photo, you can refer back to that. Just make sure everything's plugged in to the correct spot. They are all color coded. So purple to purple, white to white. You'll have a odd colored one, but that is blue to the yellow green color. You'll have your pink, and then finally your red. Other than that, we have one more plug, which is our USB cable. Get that plugged in. So now we have everything plugged in. We can slowly get it back into the dash. So there we go. You can go ahead and replace the 4 screws around the corners. So get the first one. Second one. And then the last one. So now our radio is back in. Grab your trim piece, slide that directly over. Just push it and lock it back into place. So now we have 2 more screws to hold in the radio bezel. So one is right here, one on the other side. So now those 2 are in, we can actually go ahead and reinstall our start-stop button with our heater controls. So again, 2 plugs here, start-stop button, heater control. Get this plugged in. And then get our start-stop button installed. And then slowly just get it into place and then push in, making sure it locks. So now that's all done. So then we have 2 things left to do. Just install our dash speaker grill on that side. Again, exactly the same as the driver's side, just drop it right on. Making sure it lines up, and then just push down. And then back over to the dash area, we need to finish mounting our sub control knob, and we have 2 more screws to finish installing the dash and then putting our trim panel back on. So we're on the home stretch of the reassembly process. Let's go ahead and get our cover panel on here. Again, just like the passenger side, we're just going to slip it in behind, lining up and just clicking everything back in. We'll have 3 screws that we need to reinstall here, and I'm going to show you how I'll mount my bass control knob or subwoofer control knob. Again, if you feel like you want to screw it in, please feel free to do that. It comes with all the necessary hardware to drill it in anywhere you would like. So let's go ahead and get these 3 screws in, get our subwoofer control mounted, and get our cover panel back on. First one we're going to do right here. And then on the other side up top. And our last one is right here in the dash. Just make sure it lines up. Get that in. So from there, I can mount my sub control really anywhere I want. I'm just gonna mount it kind of against this back brace here, just using a wire tie. Again, I'm not gonna need to get at it much once I have it set, but occasionally that one song comes on where you want a little extra bass, you can always turn it up. So let's go ahead and get that mounted. We'll just grab a wire tie, get it put in there. And now I have it. I'll be able to reach underneath and turn it up and down as necessary. So now our bass control knob is in. We can go ahead and grab our beauty plate, again lining it up and just pushing it in. So now that our dash is completely reassembled, if you have removed your seats for the installation, now's the time to go ahead and reinstall your seats, getting them all plugged in. If you haven't, then we'll move to the front of the Jeep and install our power wire, our fuse, and reconnect our battery. So let's go ahead and get our driver's seat in. Again, you want to be careful. You can always lay a blanket to cover up any painted area to get it in. Easiest way, again, headrest off, just pick it up and just go slowly so that you don't scratch anything. And then get it set in the general area. Then we're going to flip it up and get our plugs plugged in. So before we bolt our seat down, we need to get our plugs plugged in. We have our airbag plug. Then we have our heated seat and occupancy sensor plug. So we're going to go up and around. Go ahead and get your airbag plugged in, pushing that clip in. Same for the black plug, plugged in and clipped in, making sure that doesn't come out. So we have two Christmas trees that we need to get plugged in. The fatter one will plug in right here and just push it in. And then the smaller one will fit in one of these holes up here. So now that those are both plugged in, we can go ahead and get our seat into position. Making sure we drop it correctly. So everything's plugged in on our driver's seat. We can go ahead and throw in our seatbelt bolts. Now I like to just get them started, get them tightened down just a little bit so I can maneuver the seat if I need to for the back bolts. So we have one that's here and then one that goes straight down towards the center console. So I'll get these both started. And then get my one near my center console started. So now that I have both of these started, I can slide my seat up and then go to my back bolts, get those started, and then tighten them down. So those are both started. Go ahead and bolt them down. And then move back to the front. Now my seat is tight, and I just have to reinstall my headrest, and then I can move over to the passenger seat. So installation of the passenger side seat will go exactly as the driver's seat does as far as the plugs. Now we will have our new amplifier rack to contend with on the passenger side. So let's get the seat in, get everything plugged back in, and then I'll show you how to line up your amplifier rack and get your seat reinstalled. Again, you want to make sure that your headrest is off, and you want to be gentle when you get your seat in there. So we just want to set it down, lean it back, and then we can go ahead and start plugging in our harnesses. So let's get our plugs all plugged in. Just like the driver's side, we're going to go around the loop, get it plugged in, push our red clip in. Now for the airbag, exact same thing, get it plugged in, and clipped. Then we'll go ahead and get our Christmas tree plugged in so it holds into place. So now we're in. So now we can go ahead and set our seat down, get the locators in, and our seat's in place. Next step will be to put in the bolts for the front and the rear. Always start with hand tightening, and then this one in and started. There we go. Now we can move to the back, get our amplifier aligned, and get those rear bolts in. So now we're ready to get the rear of the seat mounted. We have to remember that the amplifier rack will bolt in with the seat in the rear. So the biggest thing you need to be concerned about is just lining up the amp rack to accept the bolt down through. So may just have to maneuver the seat and the amp rack at the same time. But once you get it started by hand, you'll be good. So now that amplifier is in on that side. On this side, it's the same thing, just moving the amp rack into position along with the seat. So we got it in there. So now we have both bolts in. Our amplifier rack is not going to move anywhere. We can go ahead and torque our bolts down and go from there. So let's just check our amplifier rack. That's not going to move anywhere. So as far as the amplifiers, we have the front amplifier, the rear speaker amplifier, and the subwoofer amplifier. So from the factory, they come set at about halfway. To start, I'm actually going to back it down just a hair on the front amplifier and the rear amplifier as well. Now we can always adjust that later down the road. So back that down just a hair, and then over to the subwoofer amplifier, we're going to leave that at about halfway. I'm going to leave the boost off, have the subsonic set at about 35 or so, and the low pass filter I'm going to have set between 75 and 80. Now this one just happens to go between 50 hertz and 180 hertz, so somewhere in that general area. So now let's tighten up our bolts in the front of the seat. And towards the transmission tunnel. Our seat's nice and tight. So now we can move on to under the hood, hooking up our power and ground wire, as well as putting in our fuse to power the amplifiers. So now it's time to give power to our amplifiers, and rehook up our factory and secondary battery. Now, we want to make sure that all of our airbag plugs are plugged back in prior to doing this. So we're going to start, grab our ground, get that tightened up, grab our power, get that tightened up, and then we will install our fuse holder and then our fuse. So let's begin with the ground. Get that on the battery, making sure it's all the way down. Grab your 10 millimeter and tighten that up. So that's nice and tight there. Moving on to our power side, you will probably get a pretty decent sized spark. So get that on, get that tightened up. So you always want to kind of give a little pull, make sure that they don't come off the battery. As far as hooking our fuse holder to the battery, we're going to go to this first one. That is a 10 millimeter, so you can go ahead and pull that off. Set that aside. Go ahead and get the ring terminal on there. Put your nut back on and tighten that down. So now that that's all tight, we still have the ability to cover up our entire battery with the plastic cover. Now it's time to install the fuse holder. Now it's time to install the fuse into the fuse holder. Go ahead and just slide it in. Again, you'll probably get a small little spark. Make sure it's seated all the way down in. Close up the cover, and then you can just keep it away. So if you want to wire tie it to anything, please go ahead, whatever makes you feel the most comfortable. But as far as now the battery, we're done. We're actually done with the entire install. So next we can hop in the Jeep, take a listen, see how it sounds, make any adjustments as necessary to either your factory or aftermarket radio, and any adjustments to the amplifiers underneath the passenger seat. So now that everything is installed, it's time to take our first listen and to do a little testing to make sure we did everything just right. So first, we're going to turn on the car. You can start it, you can just turn it on. Wait for my phone to connect. First thing we want to do is just go into the audio settings. Just check our fade and balance, make sure that's all good. Go into your equalizer, just even them out in the middle. That's kind of like your salt and pepper to taste at the end of everything. Make sure your speed adjusted volume is set to where you like it. I prefer it not on at all. And we can go back and we can give ourselves a little volume here. We're going to check our subwoofer volume knob that we installed underneath our dash. Just make sure that works as well. So let's do that. So the subwoofer volume knob is working perfectly. So let's turn it up and see how she sounds. The highs are so much more crisp with this new MB Quart system in it, and having a true tweeter in the front of the dash. Wow, what a difference. So let's add a little bit of extra. So I'm gonna go up with the bass a little. I like a little more mid, and get that treble just a hair higher. Again, it's completely up to you and your musical taste and how you listen to your music, whether it be via Bluetooth, Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, or any of the other streaming services. They'll all be a little bit different. So just remember that when you're adjusting everything. That sounds so good. So currently I have the premium OEM subwoofer replacement playing. That sounds great. Sounds much better than the factory subwoofer. So now I'm gonna hop out. I'm gonna switch over and just give a listen to the 12-inch ported tailgate subwoofer, see how much of a difference there is with that. So now let's take a listen to our Stage 6 MB Quart system with the 12-inch ported tailgate enclosure. That's a dramatic increase over the premium OEM replacement. That sounds fantastic. Even with the tops completely off, I can hear clean, crisp, concise bass. Man, I'm impressed. If you're thinking about purchasing the MB Quart Stage 6 system, I would absolutely consider adding the 12-inch ported tailgate subwoofer. The OEM premium replacement subwoofer is no slouch either, but that 12 just absolutely kicks. So from here, you're gonna wanna listen to a couple of songs, get into your bass and mid and treble controls of your factory radio or your equalizer of your aftermarket radio, and give it a little salt and pepper to your particular musical taste. You can also turn up the gains if you feel that you need a little more sound out of everything, and that's just turning up those levels that we showed you and talked to you about earlier in the video. This thing sounds absolutely incredible over the stock system. I'm so glad that I did this upgrade. So if you have any questions or are looking to purchase either the MB Quart Stage 6 system, the premium MB Quart factory subwoofer upgrade, or the 12-inch ported tailgate sub, please visit us at bantamoverland.com. And as always, guys, have a blast out there.